wanted him to relax. I didn't want him to have to want for anything. I wanted him to just be able to enjoy his life. But I didn't feel like, even after marriage, I didn't even feel like I had that right. It was like, well, you made this money. You did all of this. So I don't have a right to just sit down and relax, you know?
Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book 91, and this is your favorite dating and relationship coach. Look, we're talking to you guys today about anxious attachment. Monique just expressed something which I have dealt with clients for the last 6 months about: just being able to sit and just be. What Monique's about to explain is about how she just couldn't sit still, even to the point where her husband was willing, well, he actually did, not even willing, he did pay for a cook, a nanny, or chef, whatever she needed in order to take the load off, but she still could not rest. When you work, you need to also be able to rest. Even the Lord himself had a day of rest in his creation. So why not you? There should be a Sabbath that you actually operate by. And so Monique expressing this sentiment actually is one of the reasons why relationships suffer, because a resentment begins to build towards your partner and they don't even know why. They haven't done anything. They didn't force you. They didn't push you to be this way. They didn't push you to want to do all the things that you're doing for them. And then when it kicks in that you don't want to do it anymore, you now look at your partner like, you didn't support me, or you didn't help me, you didn't want push me to stop doing this thing. And the partner's looking at you like, what the hell happened? I didn't even realize, right? Which is what the gentleman's going to express. And so I wanted to be able to tackle this issue. You need to know how to rest. You need to know how to stop trying to earn the love of your partner by doing and serving, and learn that the person loves you not because you do, but because of who you are. Simply that, right? Simply because of who you are. We're going to break it down in this particular video as well. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of the uploads. We're going to talk about attachment here today as well for the next few minutes. All right, let's get into this.
Oh, and I felt as though I had to show him that I was worth it. Like, I had to show him that I'm not here for your money. I'm here because I love you. And I felt like I had to prove that to him by.
Now, as she says, she felt like she needed to prove that to him, but she never lets us know if he required that from her. Because in more than likeliness, he didn't require that from her. But she did that because she felt like she was inadequate. And because of her inadequacy that she felt within herself and her emotionally unsafe feelings that she had, she then presented that and projected that onto the other person, right? That she needed to do all these things to prove that she's a worthy partner, that she's one of equality. She's somebody who's is worthy of being taken seriously. And many people are in this space, right? And it's because a lot of people have this anxious attachment, which I'm going to describe to you in a few minutes' time. But I want to let this video play so you get a bit of an idea of the story we're trying to build, and then we'll go and tackle the attachment style anxious attachment as well.
Not sitting down. So even though, like, we might have a cleaning service that comes through every other week, or the week that they ain't there, who cleaning? I'm cleaning. I have no problem with mopping and cleaning dishes and cooking. I did all of that. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, I had the opportunity to actually just sit back and do nothing. And I didn't take advantage of it because I didn't look at myself like I deserved it.
And that is a key principle with anxious attachment people, right? Is that they feel like they don't deserve to be able to even rest. They don't deserve these good things because if they don't feel they've earned it, then they feel like, you know what, they don't deserve to have it. And that's really intriguing, that particular aspect, right? Because what could you do to earn it? What is in your mind that you believe that you could have done to earn this particular aspect? And then it puts the relationship into a transactional place. And so now your partner is in a transactional relationship, and they don't even know, because you in your mind are going, I must do this, and then I can do this. Right? She had the opportunity to have cleaners if she needed, probably a chef, if she wanted a nanny. He had money enough to be able to delegate these activities to somebody else, but she decided not to take it up. And that's going to cost the relationship, because now when you're stressed and you're overworked and you're resentful, you're going to force that energy onto your partner. And they're like, well, I didn't even know. I'm just trying to love you. I'm just trying to take care of you. Let's listen a bit more.
Felt like I had to keep working because I based it off of what he saw as valuable, which was his finances. So I was trying to meet him there.
Now, why was she trying to meet him there? The reality of the situation is she was trying to meet him there because she had lost sense of self. She was getting validation from external sources. And because she also was looking at him, not looking at herself as to a barometer, right? Going saying, well, he values money. So why do you have to value money? Why does she need to value money because he values money? Because she wasn't making herself the barometer. She was making him the barometer, right? She was seeking external validation, which is what actually a lot of anxious people do. They don't self-soothe and they don't validate themselves. They use other people's validation of them to validate them, right? So if I say you're good, then they believe they're good. If I say you're bad, then they believe they're bad, simply because of I am the external validator, and that forces them into a place of slavery where they're consistently people pleasing their partners or other people in the relationships that they're with them, and then they will turn on you after and be resentful and angry about you, because then if you don't give them what they want or what they need, or if you pull away or you show any kind of quote unquote abandonment or any sense of, you know, not being as close as they want, they're going to feel like they've been betrayed, they've been rejected, and then the cycle of them trying to chase you begins, right?
Not realizing like, okay, well, now that we're husband and wife, we both can enjoy life together. And it would be times where I swear I would like days where I was really tired and I would sit down and I'd just be laying on the couch like I'm tired. And it almost felt like whether he intentionally did it or not, the way I received it was almost like, what are you laying down for?
Now, what does she receive? If you notice the language she's using here, very flowery and very also around the way, meaning it's not direct. She's saying like, you know, whether he meant it that way or not, it was received as you're not, almost like you're not doing enough again. Well, what did he say? What did he say that made you feel like he was saying that to you, and to receive it in that way that you're not even sure if he was actually saying that? Rather, if that's the case and you're not actually even sure of that, then maybe you are projecting in that moment where you feel like you must work, and so you are projecting whatever they say as being they're forcing you to work, or they're wanting you to do things or to get up and move, rather than looking at it as, okay, where can I fill in? What are they actually requiring me? Why don't you ask him? See, anxious people tend to do this. They tend to abandon their own needs and take on the needs of others. They're people pleasing spirit, right? And so they accommodate others and their emotions. In fact, they begin to even align themselves with other people's emotions rather than their own. They abandon their own needs, self-abandonment, right? And so again, this is now, see what I was saying about the blame, where it's going to? It's now going on to him. But reality was, sis, is that how you felt? You're not even sure 100% if you actually felt what you felt, whether it was you that are feeling it or you are projecting your own feelings onto him as to what he said.
Like, that needs to be done. That needs to be done. So then it's like no sooner than I'm relaxing, it's like, all right, let me get up and handle this. Let me handle the kids. Let me, so there were times later on where we would have talks and I'd be like, look, I'm exhausted. And then he would step up more. During quarantine, he started stepping up.
And the reason why, and I think also when I've watched him on Love and Marriage DC, what I get from him is that he can be very dismissive in his avoidancy, right? His also attachment style is dismissive, avoidant. And what that creates is a cycle of chasing. The anxious person begins to chase the dismissive person because the dismissive person doesn't do very well with intimate, very close intimacy. And so we create this cycle of anxious person chasing the dismissive person, validating the dismissive person's ego, almost in a sense, quote unquote, and making them feel good. But once they get too close, the dismissive person feels like there's too much intimacy and feels overwhelmed and feels like, you know, they're going to lose their autonomy and they can pull away again, right? And so what that does is the anxious person is always seeking the approval of that particular partner. And I think what we're seeing here is that there may have been a case of, as she said, she expressed that she was exhausted, she was tired. And this is very similar to Tia Mowry's situation with also Corey as well, right? And this goes back to another video I've done earlier on, that earlier on she says that there was things that he allowed her to do that she felt she shouldn't have been doing. Again, looking externally at what you should have been doing, actually what you should have been holding boundaries for, and blaming somebody else. And this is what anxious people can end up doing. They end up blaming other people because they've allowed their validation to be other people when they should be looking at themselves and holding themselves accountable as to what they are doing in the relationship and what they're bringing to the table. That doesn't mean that Chris is innocent. No. It's more than likely that Chris is also dismissing her needs and not paying attention because of his own attachment styles as well, right? Because as she just says here, she was obviously exhausted, and she let him know that she was exhausted, right? And he stepped up for a few times, but it wasn't necessarily consistent. because one of the things that allows for anxious people, and this is where it's going to get interesting now. And I wish, you know what, when she said she had the therapy, I wish the therapist would have pointed this out. The issue we're going to have here is this, that the dismissive person needs to also understand that the anxious person needs consistency in order to not fill in the blanks once more again, because the anxious person is always looking for an opportunity to say, you let me down because you're not doing it the way I wanted to do it, or you're not doing it consistently the way that I do it. So when you don't do it that way, I then end up filling the gaps because my anxiety can't take the inconsistency, right? But it takes a bit of time to get to that place.
But then the consistency wasn't always there. I was trying to build businesses. A mistake that I made was I thought that he would show up for me the same way that I showed up for him when he was pursuing some of his goals. So when he was pursuing his goals, I made sure everything was handled. Like kids, if we had to pick up and move, do whatever. You go do your job, I'm gonna do everything else. So then when I started doing housewives and I started my business, Miller Eve Essentials, I was expecting that same in return.
And which is fair, it's understandable. Human beings do this all the time. When we have silent expectations, we want it to be returned the way we do it for them. And that's actually part of the manipulation of anxious people, which is actually all of them, because dismissive, dysfunctional, dysregulated, or we call it dysfunctional, or you want to call it fearful, avoidant, and anxious, they're carrying the same thing. They're all trying to avoid the anxiousness, right? The anxious person is dealing with their anxiety, but the dismissive and the fearful avoidant are also running from the anxiety, which is what they're avoiding. So in reality, when she's talking about the fact that she wanted them to show up in a particular way, what was the communication? What was the conversation? What was the request? Because for dismissive people, what they need is specificity. They need you to be specific in what you need from them, not just saying, oh, just show up for me. What does that mean? Show up for you. What does that mean? For the dismissive person, right? They have to get themselves prepared to go and do some of these stuff that require emotional energy, because the way that they grew up was in a place of neglect. So they don't register emotions, or they don't register the emotional energy in the same way that other people do, because it takes from them. And they've considered it to be a weakness. And because they've suppressed it for so long, that dealing with emotional aspects becomes overwhelming and tiring for them very, very quickly. So you need to make it very specific and clear. I hope the therapist that she was with made that clear, that if you're an anxious person, you got to make it clear cut for the other person. What do you need? Because you need to make specific what you actually need from him, rather than expecting and wanting it, but not actually being very clear and delegating what that actually is.
Where he was very open and free with like, all right, yeah, I can put money here. I can, hire the nanny for extra time or whatever. In the ways I still had to manage those things, so I'm managing that. Plus I'm trying to build this business from scratch. And it was
So he was willing to delegate, but you were saying that obviously she had to still end up kind of dealing with the delegation. So if he paid for the nanny, she'll still be dealing with the nanny. Okay, which is fair. And that can be overwhelming. And so again, a conversation needs to happen. Babe, I really appreciate the fact that you're paying for the nanny, but when I'm having to deal with the nanny, I'm still dealing with the emotional toll of having to deal with the nanny. So even though you're paying for it, and I really appreciate that, I want you to be able to take over that particular aspect. This will give me a bit more room to focus on the business, and also be able to cater for more of your needs, right? So that conversation needs to happen. All right. Now let me just quickly break this down, because for those of you, I'm talking about attachment issues. If you don't know what that actually is, so attachment issues, or attachment styles, I should say, not issues, attachment styles, is a psychological explanation for the emotional bonds and relationships between people. Okay, all right. And the theory was conceived by John Bowlby, who's a British psychologist, and then it was further developed by Mary Ainsworth, who then took it on further, right, and developed a fourth attachment, because originally was only three. There was secure, there was avoidant, and then there was anxious, preoccupied, right? But Mary Ainsworth added the fourth one, which was then what we call fearful, avoidant, and then they turned it into dismissive, avoidant too. All right. And so the four attachment styles you can see on there, but I want to focus quickly. So we've got anxious, right? The anxious is they want external validation, fear of abandonment, and they feel they must earn love. Okay, must earn love. Okay, and so when we look at how my thing's a bit small. I do apologize. I made it very, very small there. I'll read it out to you. This says children with anxious attachment style typically exhibit behaviors that reflect a deep need for closeness and reassurance. okay, along with the fear of abandonment and rejection. This attachment style often develops when a child experiences inconsistent or unpredictable responses from their primary caregiver. Sometimes the caregiver is attentive and nurturing, and while other times they may be distant, neglectful, or unavailable. As a result, children with an anxious attachment style may develop insecurity in relationships and heightened emotional responses. And so what needs to happen is a conversation of depth and specificity of what she wants from him, because he will not be able to respond in any other way, because for him he doesn't, the emotional aspect doesn't register in the same way. He's suppressed emotions for the entirety of his life, and now you want it to be more emotional and responsive. It's not going to happen. It's going to take time. And so in the same way that she had to take a journey to be able to learn about her actual value, same thing he's going to need to do. But listen, I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll do another video again another time. Listen, I'm still doing my emergency coaching, so I've got 6 slots per week now. I've gone down from 30 to 6, so I will do that up until 2025 when we reopen our books again. But if you want some coaching, you want some, this has applied to you and it's spoken to you, then by all means reach out to me, and we'll happily coach you through up until 2025. So much love, much appreciation. We'll see you again very, very soon. Ta-ra.